I'm Paulina Leiser, producer of Focus Today. Thank you for watching this video, and make sure to check our other videos at theDove.us.
Welcome back to Focus Today. Always a delight and an honor to have with us Liz Peek. She writes for FoxNews.com and also Fiscal Times, and she's a columnist. And you see her all over the place. And when you see her on some of the other networks, what an honor to know that she gives us a few moments. So, Liz, good to see you. How are you?
Very well. Thank you very much for having me on.
You bet. Well, boy, there's a lot going on. What do you think about the latest controversy of the travel ban?
Well, I think that's a good way of describing it. And actually, I talked to someone this morning who made the excellent point that had the Trump White House described this as a national security order as opposed to an immigration issue, I think the coverage would have been very different, because really, this has nothing to do, it will not impact at all most of our immigration processes. All we're doing is taking a look at the so-called extreme vetting procedures that affect, 12% of the Muslim population at most. And now it's been turned into a ban on Muslim immigration. Look, the mainstream media will not quit in its absolute all-out assault on everything that Donald Trump does. And in defense, the White House has to be perhaps more buttoned down than any White House in history, because otherwise everything they're going to do is mischaracterized. But here's the thing. Part of the measure was to stop Obama's Syrian refugee policy, the policy of admitting up to 100,000 Syrian refugees per year. That wasn't the number last year. It wouldn't be the number this year, but an escalating number. Most people wanted that stopped. And I think that's what even the New York Times today on the front page actually had to admit, that there is a sizable sector of the populace that voted for Donald Trump that wanted to see that program abandoned. And in fact, when Obama initiated it, the majority of the country was against it. So, you know, I think you just have to kind of take these issues one at a time and look at them in sort of realistic way, which this country's not used to doing. We're used to having everything sort of painted with the broad progressive brush. And if it doesn't kind of fit into that or doesn't come through that filter well, then it's a terrible idea and a terrible policy. But you and I both know that that's not true.
No, it's not. In fact, if you look at some of the numbers, even this morning, and granted they might change a little bit, but 109 people were detained and 874 came in. What's the problem here?
Yeah, look, this will get sorted out. I think the issue was, and others have said this, that the Trump White House, as I mentioned, needs to be more buttoned down than ever. In this particular program, in announcing this, they should have gone out to key allies in Congress, made them aware of what they were doing, focused a little bit more on the messaging. Remember how important Obama thought messaging was? He thought that everything people didn't like was because they hadn't presented it correctly, and I totally dispute that. But the presentation is important, and they didn't do a very good job of it.
All right. Well, hopefully they learn from this. It's 90 days. Do you see any change coming? I mean, he got the pleasure, I guess, of saying to Sally Yates, "You're fired." Of course, she knew she was only in there for a couple of days, so she made her point. But he also made his point. So where do you think this is going to go?
Well, look, I think we had a Department of Justice under President Obama that routinely ignored laws that they didn't like. That is, when we're talking about the appointment of Jeff Sessions, people are so anxious and so worried about Jeff Sessions. Why? Because he actually promises to follow the rule of law in this country. We've gotten away from that. And I think it's kind of a shock to the system to say, yeah, we have laws and we're going to enforce those laws. And if you don't like it, you're fired. And I totally support what Donald Trump did. I think that was the right measure. And by the way, Sally Yates will go on to a happy and lucrative career on the lecture tour now that everyone knows her name, which you're seeing a lot of, both on the Republican and the Democratic side, people making a name for themselves by speaking out against Trump. That's fine. That's legitimate. But, now she's gone, and I think rightly so.
All right, so today we see some corporations, people leaving the company and going out in the streets and boycotting in Southern California this morning. We've seen the Women's March the weekend after the president was inaugurated. Can you tell me what these people want?
They don't. They want to roll the clock back and elect Hillary Clinton. That's what they want. And they're having a very, very hard time adjusting to the idea that she didn't win. And here's why they're having such a hard time. The media never even contemplated that she wasn't going to win. Hillary Clinton never contemplated that, and heaven knows her followers didn't. So not only was this a disappointment for the left, but it was a shocking disappointment because no one prepared themselves for it, which, by the way, really tells you how out of touch the mainstream media is, and also the Democratic Party leadership is, with the tone of the country and the mood of the country. Had they been closer to the ground, had they been paying attention to all those blue-collar workers out there, you know what? Hillary Clinton might have won this election, but she didn't, and people just are going to have to get over it. I really wonder, kind of moving forward, are we just going to have 4 years of constant embattlement? Because I'll tell you what it's doing. It's hardening the other side, too. People who voted for Donald Trump are pretty annoyed that the Senate won't confirm his cabinet nominees, which is routine behavior. This is not a political football. You're supposed to put the team in place. The more that people like Chuck Schumer block everything that Trump wants to do, obviously criticizes everything Trump wants to do, I think people who voted for Donald Trump are like, wait a minute, who are all these people who are protesting this perfectly fair and above board election? Trump's followers turn out to be well behaved. They're not out in the streets protesting, but I'll tell you what, they're going to turn out possibly in 2 years and give the Senate Republicans a super majority in the Senate, because you have 25 Democrat senators coming up for re-election, 10 in states that Donald Trump won. I think it's very dicey how those people do if they continue this obstructionism.
Yeah, some are saying that the reason for all this pushback is to build momentum for 2018 so they could get control of the House or the Senate if they possibly could, and then call for impeachment. But I just don't see the momentum going that way.
I don't, because they don't have the support of the people. I know there are lots of people out in the streets protesting, but that doesn't really translate to the ballot box. It translates to the ballot box if you have a popular agenda. The Tea Party uprising became a political movement successfully because they were talking about putting our nation even further into debt. Nobody believed in that. A vast majority of the country was worried about our debts. What is the agenda that people, the Women's March, for example, marched for? Pro-abortion? I mean, that is not something that the entire country rallies behind. Obviously, the feelings about abortion actually are remarkably stable over time. Most people don't really want to see abortion available on demand under all circumstances, et cetera, nor do people want to outlaw it altogether. The country's split on that. So that's not going to rally a political movement. Allowing people from war-torn, terrorist-prone regions into the country, is that going to be the thing they rally around? I have no idea. But you know what? It isn't working. I tell you what is working. Trump's measures to lighten regulation on small businesses, decision to go ahead with the Keystone Pipeline, decision to walk away from the TPP. Most of the country supports all of those things and many more of the things that he's done. So, good luck with the Democrats in the next round. I think they're going to be in big trouble. All
right, let me take a quick break here, Liz. We got some more questions. We'll get a little over on the financial side of some of these issues. What a delight and honor to have with us again Liz Peek. She is with foxnews.com and also Fiscal Times, and you can check out her articles there. And of course, you see her on a lot of the networks. We'll take a quick break and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Focus Today, and always an honor to have with us Liz Peek. She writes for foxnews.com. She's a columnist. Also, you see her articles in Fiscal Times, and of course, she's a guest on a lot of the major networks. And we're talking to her today a lot about what's going on in our country, and especially with the new administration. And I have to tell you, Liz, I got an email earlier this morning. We broadcasters are thrilled to have Chairman Pai now head up the FCC. It's a majority, a Republican majority there with the commissioners, and already this morning he's deregulating some of our 45 years of regulations of carrying public files and hard copies of things. He say, well, we're going to do away with the paper copy of this stuff. So we're pretty thrilled about that, not to mention some of the attacks we've had against us television broadcasters under the Obama administration. So hopefully it's a new day there. We look forward to it. The president has done some executive orders on regulations and getting rid of those. But is he still in calm waters when it comes to tax cuts with the sitting Republicans in the Senate and in the House?
You know, I was talking to somebody else this morning about this very issue. I am somewhat stunned and deflated by the fact that the Republicans, who have had years to prepare for just a moment like this, for a moment just like this, that they are not ready to go with a tax plan. And also, after all, they have been talking about repealing and replacing Obamacare for some years now. And yes, it gets more complicated as time goes by. But you know what? They should have been ready the moment Trump was inaugurated with both a tax proposal and an Obamacare proposal. Now, it's easier to say that than to actually achieve it, because after all, people in the new administration are also eager to weigh in on how these things should look. I think the market traded down yesterday, not because of the immigration or / security issue per se, but rather that any sign that there's chaos in the White House or a lack of disciplined process probably leads to concerns that we aren't going to get tax reform right away. That is a really big piece of his agenda. And I wish that everyone in the Congress involved in this would really focus on this, because yes, they have nomination hearings and all these things going on, but this is like number one thing to American businesses. Trump has promised these CEOs that they're going to get tax relief, and he promised small businesses regulatory relief. He can do a lot on the regulation side. He can't do tax reform on his own. So this needs to move forward and move forward fast, because, you know, Republicans have been given a rare opportunity here with both houses of Congress and with the Oval Office to get stuff done. They need to get stuff done.
You make a very good point, because even the president said the other day, he says, finally, you got somebody in the White House that will sign these things. Send them to me.
Exactly.
You know.
The tax issue isn't so easy, because there are voices. Let's face it, there is still the House caucus that's very concerned about debts and deficits, and they're looking at some of the proposals and seeing debts going up. And the truth is, nobody really knows, because you don't really know the impact of an unleashed economy. I am optimistic that the economy's growth will solve a lot of problems, but, you know, there are going to be people resisting lower taxes on businesses and on people in particular, because they're concerned about the debts. I get that. And also, let's face it, there's some of the Art Laffer crowd back in the mix, and they've got rather more radical ideas about what to do about taxes and tax policy. But the other day, a couple of days ago, someone was talking to me about how they're considering a consumption tax. Okay, wow, you know, that's like out of left field, I think. Shouldn't we have been talking about that 6 months ago or a year ago? It seems a little late in the day. It would be nice to think that we're close to having a bill ready to go, and they need to get that done.
Well, do you think his corporate tax cut to 30% is in jeopardy, or is just going to take longer than everybody wants?
He's talking about more than 30%. He's talking about going from the current statutory rate of 35 to maybe 15 to 20, which, by the way, is where a lot of our trading competitors are right now. I think they'll get it done. But again, the difference between getting it done in the next month or two and by the end of the year is pretty vast, and certainly vast. And it's not that vast for corporations, frankly. They're going to make their planning determinant on what they see happening in the way of a bill going through. But it's pretty important to individuals, and it'd be nice to see that happen. Look, consumer optimism is up. Consumer spending in December was very strong. A lot of that, I think, is the hope of and the promise of lower taxes and also just a more buoyant economy. It's got to happen.
And thank you for correcting me. I meant 15% coming out of 30. Let me ask you this. What do you see happening with Obamacare? We heard some rumblings coming out of the Republicans meeting in Philadelphia that there might have been a spy in the middle of them, and that they indicated that they were very nervous about repealing Obamacare because they didn't really have anything to replace it with. I don't know if any of that's true, but you kind of wonder, with all of the proposals that's been out there to replace Obamacare, why doesn't one surface now?
Well, and frankly, if I were Paul Ryan, I would lock the people in Congress that have been working on this and Tom Price in a room and say, you don't come out until this is done. I mean, again, how can it be that they haven't reached a consensus on this? Frankly, this is, to me, easier than tax reform, because tax reform, we're really kind of swimming in a new channel, and there are lots of ideas out there. Obamacare really, first of all, and I've written about this, but first of all, repeal Obamacare. It doesn't have to be repealed as of today. It can be repealed as of December 31st, 2018. But that would light a fire under Congress. Secondly, I love this idea. This is not my idea, but I think it's the best. Take away Congress's carve-out from Obamacare. Remember, they were allowed not to sign on to Obamacare through some spurious reasoning. Let's get rid of that and make them also very concerned about how this works out. And third, just tell them it's got to be done by, 6 months from now. No ifs, ands, or buts. And put it on them. I mean, Tom Price is going to be confirmed very soon here, probably today, I think. And so we have someone ready to go. So where's Congress? They need to get this done.
All right, the market's off a little bit. It did close above 20K for a couple of days there, but it's off a little bit. I guess just the emotions of the country right now, and you saying maybe somewhat confusion inside the White House. But overall, where do you see the market going?
Well, someone was reminding me the other day that Reagan's first year, the market did not trade higher because there was such resistance to his proposals and so forth. And you could see that this year. I'm optimistic about the market. I think this is going to be an era that's good for business, good for investors and so forth. But it's not going to go smoothly because Democrats, weirdly, are absolutely entrenched against proposals that enliven the economy. I do think the economy will start to grow faster, but again, it could take a while for all that to materialize. So we'll see. My guess, we'll see backing and filling. I think some sectors like financials are going to do better because you're not going to have this enormously punitive government constantly socking them for tens of billions of dollars of fees and penalties and so forth. But for the market overall, I think it'll move higher this year, but not a great deal.
All right, my last question before I run out of time. It looks like the president's going to announce a Supreme Court nominee tonight. Some indications are it's Hardiman. There are 3 on the list. Any of them concern you?
No, I like Hardiman. I think he's a good choice, partly because he was appointed to the appeals court 95 zip with Chuck Schumer and Dianne Feinstein, both important voices on the relevant committee, passing him without a problem. So it's going to be a little hard for them to come back and say, gee, he's not qualified. I also like his personal story, the fact that he's the first in his family to go to college. He didn't go to Harvard. He would be the only justice without an Ivy League credential. And by the way, that in and of itself is diversity. People are talking about diversity on the Supreme Court. That's diversity, right? Opinion and background, et cetera. Anyway, I think he'd be a super choice. And frankly, the fact that Trump's sister sits on the same court with him means probably Trump knows him a little bit, or at least trusts her judgment of him, which apparently is very good. He just seems like he has a very positive background, and I think he'd be a great choice.
Liz, thank you for your time. We do value it greatly. And let me say to our viewers and listeners, you can follow her at foxnews.com and Fiscal Times as well. Thank you, Liz. Look forward to many visits in the future. Keep up the good work.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Great day. All right. We'll see you next time on Focus Today.